What is a thread? A thread is a single sequential flow of control within a program. In JMeter, a thread contains the flow of test executions you want to perform. Please remember that without a thread group, it is not possible to write test cases. So when you start writing test cases in JMeter, always create a thread group at the beginning. In order to create a thread group, go to the test plan icon, right click, go to add option, threads, thread group, and you can choose any one of these according to your requirement. This will create a thread group inside the test plan. By default, we have 4 different types of thread groups. These are general thread group, open thread model group, setup thread group, and teardown thread group. We will be learning about them one by one. The first one is the general thread group. Now, if you see on the right hand side of the screen, you will find the thread body. On the top, you have the name and comments section. You can customize it with the user input name and comments. Below that, we have some controllers. These controllers decide how the thread group will behave if there is an error in the flow. Continue means when an error is encountered, the test will continue to execute. Start next thread loop means when an error is encountered, the next loop of the thread will begin its execution. Stop thread means when an error is encountered, the current thread will stop its execution. Stop test will abort the test. Stop test now will abort the test immediately without allowing the users to ramp down. Just below the thread controllers, you will find 3 boxes. The first one tells how many users you want to execute on the current thread. The second one is the ramp up value. This means in how much time you want the number of users defined to log into the system. For example, you have given 500 users. Ramp up time means in how much time you want the 500 users to be put into the system. It can be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes or 1 hour, depending on the type of application you are testing. The value is in seconds. So if you want to give 1 hour, it has to be 3600, that is 3600 seconds. Below this, we have 3 checkboxes. The first one allows the use of the same users on every iteration. The second one halts the creation of thread until it is needed. It is always advised to keep this box unchecked. The third box allows you to configure thread duration. It means you can describe the amount of time in which you want the thread to be executed by adding a value here. Please remember this value has to be given in seconds. So if you want to give 2 minutes, you have to put the value of 120 seconds here in this value. The startup delay box helps you to delay the execution of threads by the amount of time you have provided. The next one is the open thread model group. Typically, we define the number of threads or users in a thread group. But what if we don't want to define the number of threads or users? There is no thumb rule to follow to utilize the optimum number of threads for a test plan. There are numerous factors that can influence the number of test plan that a system can spin. Open model thread group allows a defined pool of threads or users to run without explicitly mentioning the number of threads. So this particular tab tells you what are the actions that thread group can take if the sampler encounters an error. In easy words, it can be said that it is used for error control. In the schedule tab, you can click any of the 4 or you can write your own Groovy script to allow the users. This will allow the users to load into the test based on the condition you have designed particularly. To define a steady state, use the following expression. These commands are there in the description box. JMeter functions are also accepted in the expression. The last two are the setup thread group and teardown thread group. Many times you need to create users or some other kind of prerequisites to be performed before executing the test. In that case, either you can have a separate thread group to perform this, or you can use setup thread group in the scenario. The same reason goes for the teardown thread group, but for a different reason. Like in setup thread group, we use it to create data or any other kind of prerequisites for the test. The same way in teardown thread group, it is used to delete all the data and other post requisites that were needed after the test. Let us see an example. Now I have created one thread group here, one setup thread group here, and one tear down thread group here. I have attached one HTTP request. It's just the normal www.google.com. It's a GET request. For the setup, same, I have given the google.com, but I have changed the name over here so that in the listeners you can identify which are the requests are for the setup thread group and which are the requests for the tear down thread group and what are the requests for the normal thread group. And I'll go to the view results tree and I'll click on the execute. Here you can see the request of the setup thread group is executed before the request of the normal thread group, and the request of the tear down thread group is executed after the normal one. I will clear this by clicking on this button over here and I will execute it one more time. Now what will happen if I do some exceptions? Like I will create a thread group, setup thread group, and I will copy paste the tear down request and paste it over here, and I will comment this. So instead of using a tear down thread group, I am using two setup thread group and one normal thread group. In the setup thread group, I have the setup thread request, and in this setup thread group request, the second one, I have the tear down request. Now let's see what happens. See, the tear down request is being executed before the test request. Since it is a setup thread group, these requests will be executed before this normal thread group. Now let's see what happens if I use a tear down thread group. I will add a tear down thread group here and I will copy paste the setup thread. I will comment this. So I have a setup thread request in a tear down thread group, I have a tear down thread request in a tear down thread group, and I have the normal thread group. Let us execute it now. See, since we are using tear down thread group, all the pre and post requisites requests are executed after the normal request. So that's why it is always recommended to use a combination of setup thread group, normal thread groups,